All right, so this will be the most any of you ever hear me talk, ever. So I will start with this. I was 10 years old when I first got put on the curb by an officer. I didn't understand it at the time, but I was 10, so I just let it go. We figured it out. They thought I was somebody I wasn't, who was a friend of mine at the time, who may see this post, and that's okay. I don't even know if he remembers it or even knows that it happened, because he wasn't with me at the time. They thought I was committing a crime or had committed a crime, and I didn't. Fast forward to when I was 20. I got pulled over by 2 members of the gang squad in a third car for backup, saying I crossed the center line. They were about to get me out of the car when I think what happened was somebody over the radio heard that it was me in the car and said, "Let him go." And they did. I start with those stories because it can happen to any of us. I have police officers that are some of the best people I've ever met in my life today. They're some of the best people. I went to school with some of them. This is not a police thing. This is a human being thing. We, as a people, as a country, we have gotten here on our own. And I hate to say that. We have gotten here on our own. It's a history of it, but we have gotten here. Our leaders have gotten us here. If we can't get along at the top, we're never going to get along as a people. The Democrats and Republicans, or whatever you want to call them, the political parties, they can't get along. They argue all the time. You got politicians calling each other names publicly like they're 10, like they're little children, and they're expecting everybody else in the country to get along. And that's not going to happen. Until our leaders can come together, we're not going to come together. And that's not saying racism is not alive. That's not saying it's not a bad thing. That's not saying it's hundreds of years in the making. That's saying it's not going to get better because of what's already been happening. That's saying what is happening, the protests are a good thing. The looting and the violence and the excuses to steal and to harm other people is not a good thing. I am sad because I've had to live through some things that I shouldn't have to, and I'm afraid that my 8-year-old son is going to have to live through some things that he shouldn't have to. I'm ashamed because, there's been some revelations about things that have happened that shouldn't have happened. My wife has had to live through some things that have happened to me and a friend of mine who I was just out with that she shouldn't have even witnessed. And the sad part about it is that these things have happened within the last 5 years, and I've said to her, it's not the first time and it's not the last. And to look at her face and for her to just say, "What?" And that's just the realization of it all. I don't know where the world is going, but I know that until there's a lot of things that have to come together before us as a people can come together. Riots and protests aren't going to do it. And I'm not. That's not to say that we can't make awareness, but we can't wait until something happens to keep their awareness happening. Meaning, every time something happens, we react. Rodney King, we reacted. These recent episodes, everybody has reacted. And then we leave it to the leaders to try to figure it out. When in fact, they can't figure it out. How can we let them figure out racism and this divide when they can't figure out how to, make sure that the rich and the poor are even enough in taxes, or, how the laws can even out. They can't get along. You got, the Wisconsin government, the governor's making a law and then the legislature's suing him to repeal the law. And that's not saying one's right or the other, but they can't get along to service that. How are we supposed to as a people react and get and be there together when our leaders can't be together? We act like this is surprising when this has been fostered. This has been coming for a long time. So we can't act surprised when this happens, because we're here. And so when the government acts like this and has been acting like this since I've been alive, we can't be surprised when this happens. Martin Luther King Jr. has been, we were there. He was there, and it was, peaceful protests. And now you have people inciting riots and creating violence and damage, really for no reason. You have people doing these things where and they they're hurting people that have had nothing to do with these things. I am saddened because of what's happened. I am confused because of the reaction that's happened. And I don't know where to go with the future of our children because of this. What I can say is that we need to be more encouraging of each other. And I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, orange, whatever. You never know where somebody's been or been through. So be encouraging. I see people who are supposedly God-fearing, religious, church-going folks, and I don't care if I piss you off or not, but you want to say one thing, you want to discourage folks, but that's not what Jesus did. If you want to be God-fearing people, then pray for your leaders. Don't discourage them publicly. Don't do this publicly. You're saying that, but then you're acting a different way. If you're acting a different way, then you're not God-fearing people. God-fearing people will be encouraging our leaders, praying for our leaders, not downgrading them on social media, not being Twitter gangsters, or not being social media gangsters, or wherever you want to call yourselves, on the phone, on social media. Pray for your leaders, be encouraging of your leaders, whether they're of the Republican Party, Democratic Party, whatever. Encourage and pray for them. That's what our country needs right now. Because honestly, nothing's going to happen until those two folks or those two parties come together and figure it out. I don't care what they are. We have to encourage and pray for our leaders. And if you want to call yourself a church-going person, a God-fearing person, and you're just disparaging people on social media, or don't call yourself a God-fearing person, because you're not. Because Jesus would say, encourage all, be there for all. But if you're just being out there not being helpful, then you're not a God-fearing person. And you need to look within yourself. I don't know really what else to say except be kind to one another, encourage one another. If you see somebody in need, help them. Don't hinder them. If you see somebody in the media or in the world, you got a friend, pray for them. Be there for them. Don't discourage. Don't judge. Don't just be there to be there, and don't pretend like you've been there where this Mr. Floyd has been, or where some of us people of color have been, because you haven't. And until you could say that, then you can't really say where, you can't really predict or understand where anybody is coming from. That being said, you probably won't ever hear from me on Facebook again, because I don't post anything unless my wife's posting something for me. But I figured I needed to put something out there and say it. The fact that all of a sudden in Kenosha we had to have a curfew almost a week later after this happened is ridiculous, because it sounds like you're just co-signing on something that happened before. That doesn't mean you can't protest, but let's do it right, people. Let's just do it right. So pray for one another, be safe out there, and God bless everyone.